It all began on a chilly Friday afternoon. Ryan, a 32-year-old man from Michigan, packed his old backpack, strapped his tent, and tossed a flashlight inside. He was the kind of man who loved the wild, someone who found peace where most people found discomfort. He always said, "The forest makes me feel alive." That weekend, he decided to explore a place he had only heard about in stories, an old forest in the northern part of the state. To the locals, the forest was beautiful, yes, but also avoided. It wasn't because of wild animals or because the trails were too hard. No, the locals whispered about strange things, sounds at night, missing hikers and hunters who came back with stories they refused to repeat. But Ryan didn't care about old stories. He thought they were just ghost tales meant to scare kids. He wanted peace, solitude, and the thrill of surviving alone in nature. He parked his truck at the edge of the trail, slung his bag over his shoulder, and walked deeper into the woods. The deeper he went, the quieter it became. The chirping birds faded. The wind grew still. It was as if the forest was holding its breath, watching him. Hours passed. The sun dipped low, painting the horizon with streaks of orange and red. Ryan finally found a small clearing between tall, crooked trees, perfect for setting up camp. He laid down his tent, collected dry branches, and struck a match. Soon, a small fire crackled before him. For a while, it felt peaceful. The flames danced, the warmth kept away the cold that seeped through the trees. Ryan leaned back against his backpack, looking at the stars. But then, just as the fire settled into a low burn, he heard it. A sudden crack, somewhere deep in the dark. Ryan froze. His head snapped toward the sound. He squinted, but all he saw were endless shadows between the trees. He let out a nervous laugh. Probably a deer, he thought. Or maybe a raccoon. Nothing unusual in the woods. Minutes passed. He leaned back again, trying to relax. But then, another crack. Louder. Closer. His heart jumped. This time, it didn't sound like a small animal. It sounded heavier, like footsteps, circling his camp. Ryan's mouth went dry. His pulse quickened. He whispered to himself, "Stay calm. Just an animal." But deep down, he knew it wasn't. The steps were too heavy, too human. He stood, shining the flashlight in a wide arc around the clearing. The light caught only trees, bushes, and shadows. But the footsteps stopped. Dead silent. The silence was worse than the sound. Ryan slowly sat back down, but he didn't take his eyes off the dark. The fire popped loudly, making him flinch. His nerves were unraveling. He pulled his blanket tighter, telling himself to sleep, but sleep never came. Because the footsteps returned. This time, they moved closer. Ryan swore he heard whispering, low and indistinct, like voices carried by the wind. His skin prickled, cold sweat forming on his forehead. He didn't move. He didn't dare. He thought if he stayed quiet, whatever it was would go away. Hours dragged on like days. The fire burned low until the clearing was bathed in shadows. Ryan's eyes grew heavy, but every time he almost drifted off, he jolted awake. At one point, he swore he saw movement at the edge of the firelight. A figure, tall, still, watching. But when he blinked, it was gone. He thought about running, packing his things, sprinting back to the car. But the trail was long, the night was cold, and he couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was out there was waiting for him to move. So Ryan sat there, frozen, listening, heart pounding so loud he feared it might give him away. And just before dawn, as the first weak light touched the trees, the footsteps stopped. The whispers faded. The forest returned to silence. Ryan exhaled, his breath shaking. He told himself it was nothing, just his imagination, just the woods playing tricks. But deep down, he knew the truth. That was only the beginning. The first of 13 nights that would try to kill him. The morning after that first night, Ryan tried to convince himself it was nothing. He woke up stiff, his body aching from the hard ground, but he was alive. The fire had died, leaving only ash and smoke curling into the cool air. He rubbed his eyes, looked around the empty clearing, and laughed nervously. "It was just an animal," he muttered. "That's all. Just the forest doing what the forest does." But he didn't quite believe it. He packed his small cooking pot, boiled water for coffee, and tried to push the night out of his head. Yet as he sipped from the tin cup, his eyes kept drifting toward the tree line. It felt different now, as if the trees were leaning closer, watching him. By noon, Ryan decided to hike deeper. He thought if he explored during the day, maybe he'd find some beauty that would erase the fear. He followed a narrow trail that wound between pines, the ground soft with needles. The deeper he walked, the quieter it became. Birds flew overhead, but they didn't sing. The only sound was the crunch of his boots. After an hour, he found something strange. A massive oak stood in the middle of the path, its bark scarred. Ryan stepped closer and froze. 13 symbols had been carved into the trunk. Circles, jagged lines, twisted shapes that didn't look like anything he recognized. They weren't random. They were deliberate. He touched the bark. The grooves were deep, fresh. Whoever carved them hadn't done it long ago. A chill ran through him. He backed away, but his boot landed on something soft. He looked down. A dead bird, its wings spread wide, eyes black and empty. Then another, and another. A whole ring of lifeless birds scattered at the base of the tree. Ryan's stomach churned. He wanted to leave, but curiosity pulled him closer. He snapped a photo on his phone. The screen flickered. For a split second, the picture showed not just the tree and the symbols, but something else. A tall, shadowy figure standing behind the trunk. Ryan blinked, looked up. Nothing there. Just trees swaying gently in the breeze. He checked his phone again. The picture was normal now. No figure, just bark and symbols. He laughed nervously, slipping the phone back into his pocket. But his hands wouldn't stop shaking. The rest of the day felt wrong. The deeper he walked, the more he felt watched. The trail twisted in ways he didn't remember. Twice, he ended up back at the oak tree, even though he swore he had gone straight. By late afternoon, he gave up and returned to camp. He built the fire higher this time, piling branches until the flames roared. The light made him feel safer. For a while. That night, as he lay in his tent, he heard it again. The footsteps, slow, crunching, moving around the clearing. Ryan held his breath. His flashlight was in his hand, ready. He told himself to wait, to listen. Maybe it would pass. But then came the voice. At first, faint, like wind through leaves, then clearer, a whisper, his name. Ryan. His blood ran cold. He sat up, heart pounding so hard he thought it would burst. He shone the flashlight through the tent wall. Nothing, just shadows of trees. He unzipped the flap slowly, carefully, and swept the light across the clearing. The fire burned low, casting long shadows. The trees stood silent, but the whispers didn't stop. He turned the light toward the trail. That's when he saw it. A figure, tall, dark, standing at the edge of the firelight, too far to see clearly, but close enough to feel. Ryan's throat tightened. He wanted to shout, but no sound came. The figure didn't move. It didn't speak. It just stood there, watching. He raised the flashlight higher, blinking against the fear, and then the figure was gone. Just like that, the space where it stood was empty. Ryan staggered back into the tent, zipped it shut, and clutched his blanket like a child. He lay there, shaking, listening as the footsteps began again, slow, deliberate, circling. All night, they never stopped. Sometimes close, sometimes farther away, but always there. By dawn, Ryan's eyes were bloodshot. He hadn't slept. The fire had died, and he knew deep in his gut that this was no animal. This was something else, something that didn't want him there. And the worst part? He wasn't sure if it wanted him to leave or if it wanted him to stay. By the third night, Ryan knew something was very, very wrong. The forest was no longer just quiet, it was unnaturally quiet. Even the insects seemed to avoid his campsite. No chirping, no buzzing, no rustling of small creatures in the underbrush. Only the sound of his own breathing. All day he had tried to distract himself. He fished in the nearby creek. He wrote in his notebook. He even forced himself to hum just to break the silence. But the forest seemed to swallow every sound, like it didn't want him to make noise. That evening, as the sky bled into dusk, Ryan rebuilt his fire, piling on more wood than before. He wanted light, warmth, something to push back the darkness he knew was coming. He sat close to the flames, clutching his pocket knife, staring into the tree line. He told himself he'd make it through one more night, then leave in the morning. That was his plan. He would pack up and never come back. But the forest had other plans. It started with the wind. A sudden gust rushed through the clearing, snuffing the flames almost instantly. One moment the fire roared, the next it was smoke and glowing embers. Ryan cursed, fumbling for his lighter. His hands shook as he tried to reignite the fire. Sparks, no flame. Again, sparks, no flame. That's when he heard it. A scream. Human. Female. It tore through the forest, high-pitched and agonized, echoing between the trees. Ryan froze. His lighter dropped into the dirt. His chest tightened as the scream twisted into something inhuman, like metal scraping against metal, like bones snapping one after another. He wanted to run, but his legs refused to move. He grabbed his flashlight and swept it across the tree line. Nothing, just shadows. Then, he spun. Just beyond the clearing, something shifted between the trees. A tall shadow, too tall. Its limbs looked wrong, too long, stretching unnaturally as it moved. Ryan backed toward his tent, his light trembling in his hand. He wanted to believe it was a trick of the dark, but deep down, he knew better. The whisper came again. This time it wasn't distant, it was right behind him. He whipped around, shining the beam straight into the darkness, and for the first time he saw it clearly. A figure, 7 feet tall at least, its body thin and jagged like branches woven together into a human shape. Its eyes, if you could call them eyes, glowed a dull, angry red. Its mouth stretched too wide, filled with teeth like broken glass. Ryan's stomach dropped. His flashlight flickered. The creature stepped forward. Ryan scrambled back, tripping over his own bag. He hit the ground hard, pain shooting up his arm. The flashlight flew from his hand and rolled, its beam spinning wildly over the trees. For a split second, he saw them. Not just one. 13. 13 figures standing in a circle just beyond the clearing, each one twisted, misshapen, watching him. Ryan's breath caught. He couldn't move, couldn't think. His mind screamed, "Run," but his body was frozen in place. The tallest figure leaned closer, its face inches from his. The smell of rot filled his nose, like wet soil and burning hair. Its mouth stretched too wide, filled with teeth like broken glass. Ryan squeezed his eyes shut. He didn't want to see, he didn't want to know, he just prayed. When he opened them again, they were gone. The clearing was empty, silent. Only the flashlight lay on the ground, its weak beam pointing toward the oak tree with the carved symbols. Ryan crawled to it, shaking uncontrollably. His mind was breaking. He knew what he saw. 13 horrors standing there, waiting. And he knew, without a doubt, that they weren't going to let him leave. Not alive. Ryan didn't sleep, not that night, not after what he saw. The next morning, his body felt heavy, drained. His eyes were swollen, bloodshot like he hadn't blinked in hours. He sat by the cold ashes of his fire, clutching his backpack, rocking slightly, whispering to himself, "One more night, just one more, then I'm out, I'm gone, I swear." But deep down, he knew leaving wasn't going to be that easy. All day he tried. He packed his tent, stuffed everything into his bag, and headed down what he thought was the way back. He walked for hours, sweat soaking through his shirt, his legs burning with each step. But every path twisted back on itself. No matter which way he turned, no matter how far he went, he always ended up at the same oak tree with the 13 carved symbols. By evening, Ryan realized the truth. The forest wasn't letting him go. It had him, and when the sun dipped, painting the sky blood red, the terror began again. The wind rose suddenly, carrying with it a stench so foul he gagged, rotting flesh mixed with wet soil. His flashlight flickered even before he turned it on. The trees around him bent unnaturally, their branches curling like skeletal fingers. Then, from the distance, footsteps. Not one, not two, many. Crunching leaves, snapping branches, moving closer, surrounding him. Ryan's chest tightened as panic clawed through him. He stumbled backward, shining the flashlight wildly through the trees. Shadows danced, shapes moved, and then he saw them again. The circle, 13 horrors standing between the trunks, their glowing eyes fixed on him. But this time, they didn't stay at the edges. They moved. Ryan screamed, bolting toward the trail, running as fast as his legs could carry him. Branches whipped his face, tore at his arms. He didn't care. He just needed to move, to escape. Behind him, the whispers followed. "Ryan, stay! Ryan!" The voices weren't just behind him anymore. They were in his ears, inside his head, crawling under his skin. He slapped his ears, desperate to drown them out, but they only grew louder. He ran until his lungs burned. His boot caught on a root and he went flying, slamming hard into the dirt. Pain exploded in his chest. His flashlight tumbled away, its beam pointing uselessly at the trees. And then, something grabbed his ankle. Cold, icy fingers like stone wrapped tight around him, yanking him back into the dark. He screamed, kicking wildly, clawing at the ground, leaving long gouges in the dirt. His fingernails tore, blood smearing across the leaves. He turned, and there it was, one of them, crawling out of the earth itself. Its face pale, stretched too thin, its eyes hollow sockets dripping with black liquid. Its jaw unhinged, opening wider, wider, until it looked like it could swallow him whole. Ryan kicked with everything he had, his boot slamming into its face. The creature shrieked, a sound so piercing it rattled his skull. He scrambled to his feet, grabbed the flashlight, and shone it straight at the thing. For a moment, it recoiled, its skin sizzling under the beam. But then, to his horror, it lunged again. And behind it, more figures emerged. From the ground, from the trees, from the shadows. All 13, closing in. Ryan stumbled backwards, sobbing, his heart pounding out of his chest. "No, no, no, no!" he screamed. He ran again, blindly, the light bouncing wildly with each frantic step. The whispers turned into screams now, dozens of voices shrieking his name, shrieking words he couldn't understand. Then, silence. The forest went dead still. Ryan slowed, gasping for air, his throat raw from screaming. He turned slowly in a circle, shining the light around him. Nothing. Just trees. Then, a hand landed on his shoulder. He whipped around and saw her. A woman. Pale, dirty, her hair matted with leaves, eyes wide with terror. She looked human. Too human. "Please, help me," she whispered. Ryan's breath caught. His instincts screamed, "Don't trust her." But his heart ached at the sight of her. He reached out a trembling hand. Her lips curled, not into a smile, into something hungrier. Her face began to split, skin tearing, mouth stretching until it wasn't a mouth anymore, but a gaping wound lined with jagged teeth. Ryan screamed as she lunged, her jaws snapping inches from his face. He swung the flashlight like a weapon, slamming it against her skull. She collapsed with a hiss, dissolving into black smoke that vanished into the soil. Ryan fell to his knees, sobbing, shaking uncontrollably. His body ached, his mind frayed. And in that broken moment, a horrible realization hit him. This wasn't just about scaring him. They were testing him, breaking him. 13 horrors, and each one was going to try to kill him, one by one. And the night was far from over. Ryan didn't know how long he'd been running. His body was breaking down. His legs burned. His chest felt like it was splitting open, every breath slicing through his lungs like fire. But he couldn't stop. Not now. Not with them behind him. The forest stretched endlessly, every tree looking the same, every shadow hiding something waiting to lunge. He could hear them following, 13 sets of footsteps moving as one, sometimes slow, sometimes impossibly fast, always just behind him. His flashlight sputtered again, the beam dimming with every flicker. "Please, no, not now," he begged, smacking the side of it. The light flashed one last time before dying completely, leaving him in suffocating darkness. Silence. But it wasn't real silence. Ryan could hear breathing. Deep, ragged, surrounding him from every direction. His hands shook as he fumbled for the lighter in his pocket. The tiny flame sparked to life, trembling in the cold air. It barely lit more than his fingertips, but it was enough. Enough to see them. All 13. They stood in a perfect circle around him, their eyes burning like coals in the night, each one different, twisted, deformed. But together, they felt like pieces of one greater nightmare. One step closer, its skin sagging, lips sewn shut with rusted wire. It tilted its head, twitching violently, then let out a muffled scream that made Ryan's knees buckle. Another crawled on all fours, bones snapping audibly with every movement, dragging its body toward him with sickening cracks. Ryan stumbled back, his lighter slipping from his grip. The flame died. Darkness swallowed him again. The ground trembled. He felt it through his hands, his knees. The forest itself seemed to be breathing. Then, from below, the soil split open. Fingers, dozens of them, grabbing, clawing, trying to drag him down into the earth. He screamed, kicking, thrashing, but the more he fought, the tighter they pulled. Dirt filled his mouth, choking him. His fingernails peeled back as he clawed desperately at the ground, but it was useless. This is it, he thought. This is how it ends. Then, light. Blinding white light. Ryan blinked, coughing, his chest heaving as the hands retreated, hissing in pain. He looked up, and through the blur of tears, he saw it. A flashlight beam, and behind it, a voice. Hey you! Stay where you are!" It was a forest ranger. Ryan sobbed with relief, crawling toward the man like a wounded animal. But before he reached him, the ranger froze. His flashlight shook slightly in his hand. "What the hell?" the ranger whispered. Ryan turned, and his blood turned to ice. The 13 horrors weren't gone. They were still there, standing just beyond the beam of light, their bodies twitching violently, their eyes glowing even brighter. But they weren't attacking. They were watching, waiting. And for the first time, Ryan understood something. They couldn't touch him now. Not while someone else was there. Not while the Ranger's light cut through the dark. But they weren't finished with him either. The Ranger grabbed Ryan's arm, pulling him to his feet. "Come on, let's get you out of here." They stumbled together through the trees, the beam of light shaking across the forest floor. Ryan refused to look back, but he could feel it, the weight of their stares, their presence just outside the glow. After what felt like hours, the trees finally thinned, gravel crunched under his boots. The Ranger's truck sat waiting by the trailhead. Ryan collapsed into the passenger seat, his whole body trembling. As the engine roared to life, he glanced into the mirror. And there they were, 13 pairs of glowing red eyes standing at the edge of the forest, watching him drive away. Ryan never went back. He burned his camping gear. He never spoke of the exact place, never wanted anyone else to find it. But sometimes, when the night is too quiet, when the wind rattles against his window, he swears he still hears them. 13 whispers calling his name.